Dan Chapman situation. A lot of people inboxing me, asking me the word at the press conference. Dan Chapman, you know, what's going on? There's nothing going on with me and Dan Chapman. You know, Dan Chapman is an exceptionally skilled boxer. You know, his skill set's on a world level, really. After spending some time with him in Marbella, I must admit I was impressed. I was impressed with what he can do, with his movement and his knowledge. You know, and he can dispense that knowledge verbally very well. You know, he would make a brilliant coach. I don't have a good opinion of Dan Chapman. You know, it's a very negative opinion that I have of him, but I'm not here to voice that. You know, I had something to say to Dan Chapman, and I sent him, you know, a message in private, and I told him exactly what I thought of him. And, you know, Dan Chapman decided to put those messages out there, which doesn't bother me. That's on Dan Chapman, you know, if he wants to put private messages up there. But that message is how I feel. That's my opinion of Dan Chapman. And I did see a comment by Dan Chapman that said, "I know what you got paid for your last fight." Ha 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 ha. You know, like, there's a reason Dan Chapman knows what I got paid for my fight in Spain, because I told him. You know, and what we get paid in this game isn't really anybody else's business but our own. You see, me, I don't compare myself to other people, especially financially. I don't compare myself to others. What I do is I compare myself to how my life used to be and how little I once had, and that makes me feel incredibly wealthy. You know, in the last 3 years for the BKFC, I've probably made more money than I did in the previous 15 years as a working man. You know, we are very comfortable over here as a family. You know, we've got rainy day money. We went abroad 11 times last year. 11 times. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I would do 11 trips abroad in 1 year. Praise the Lord. You know, and all this stuff has come from the BKFC. This all come from fighting. You know, we've got a wedding paid for. We've got nice cars, house. We're doing really, really good. And that's what I compare myself to, how I used to be. I don't look at somebody else and go, ha, I got more than you. It's just not my style. You know, and if Dan Chapman wants to make videos pretending that his borrowed holiday home is his house, that's up to Dan. You know, like I say, I wish him all the very best. You know, I don't wish any harm or, you know, any discomfort on Dan Chapman. He's got the skills to go all the way. You know, and one day Dan Chapman might be involved in a fight that, you know, that people actually want to watch. And after speaking to the staff at the BKFC, you know, he will not be fighting Gary Fox. They won't even attempt to make that fight. So whichever route Dan decides to go, you know, I really, really do wish him well. You know, it's as simple as that. God bless you, Dan.